How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to part 20 of our multiplayer game with Unity and Node.js series. Today we're going to be going over a sign in and a sign up system, something that's very simplistic. You guys can build upon it or whatever. So we're going to have two main functionalities. We're going to have a way to create an account. The server is going to be able to handle that. It's going to hash the password, put it in the database, and then we're going to be able to sign into that account and then continue playing. So right now, when you start the game, you'll be greeted with a beautiful sign-in form. And I don't really have like too much feedback right now. But if you were to type in a password here and hit sign in, you'll notice I'm not signing in. But if I actually put in the right password here and I hit sign in, it'll take me to the join now. So we're gonna see a little bit more of this on the server. So if I just bring up the server real quick here, I bring this over, you'll see it gives us a little bit of more feedback for the password does not match and when it actually does match. So we get a little bit of nice logic there. And then when you guys join, everything will be all right into the game. So this would be logged onto a user account. So in that scenario on the server, the connection is that user. So if you have to update stats or whatever, then you have a way to do that. Cool. So we're going to start that right now. All right, guys. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up some simplistic UI here. So let's go ahead and we're going to just toggle off the join panel. I'm in the main menu scene for those that need to know which scene I'm in. Under UI here, we're just going to go ahead, right click on UI, create an empty game object here. And the best thing we can do is I kind of want it to be similar to the join panel. So if you left click on join panel, then right click on rect transform here, copy component, and then paste component values, then you'll get the same shape. And then I'm just going to hit F2 to rename here, and I'm going to call this sign in / create. Beautiful. The first thing we're going to do actually is add, so you'll notice my thing, it kind of had like 3 rows and the bottom row is split into 2. So a little bit of formatting here. We're going to use a vertical layout container. If you guys aren't familiar with Unity UI, don't worry. I'm working on a series right now to kind of just go over Unity UI as a whole and kind of help you guys so you guys can make some really nice menus. Because what I'm showing in these tutorials is not the best capability at all. So we're just going to set this up with a 10 spacing. You'll notice this when you see everything drop down, it'll look nice. And just kind of follow along. So we're going to have it control the size of the width. So it's going to be the full width. It's going to expand stuff. And then we'll just have the force expand on width and height. And we'll set this to middle center. So it kind of builds out from this point, the 3 rows. Beautiful. The next thing we're going to do is right click, and I have Text Mesh Pro. If you guys don't have Text Mesh Pro, you guys can grab it from the package manager, or you guys can just simply use the other input fields. But I'm going to use the Text Mesh Pro versions like I have all along. So we're going to select an input field here. I'm going to rename this right now to username-input. Beautiful. This looks kind of bad. So let's go ahead and we're going to change the height to 60. Zoom in here. So the text here looks kind of weird. So let's go ahead. So in input you have a placeholder and then the regular text that goes over it. So for the placeholder text, let's say username, and I'm going to select with shift. I'm going to select both the placeholder and text. That way I can edit multiple components at once. I'm going to set this to center, and then change the font size to like 30. So just something that's nice and big. Cool, and I'm just gonna go ahead and save my scene right there. So we have one input right now. I'm gonna select the input, I'm gonna hit Control D. I believe it's Command D on Mac to duplicate. Let's rename this to password. So one thing with passwords, and I'm going to go in here and change the placeholder text to password, is passwords typically come as like little asterisks when you type in. That's a field under input. So I'm clicked on password input here. You're going to scroll down to where it says, so you have the text mesh pro input field, and then we have content type, change it from standard to password. And there's a bunch here to choose from. So typically when I'm doing a sign-in field, I'll do alphanumeric. So that's just letters and numbers, right? Or if you want an email address tied into it, select that. It just gives you like a little bit of like validation on what like characters you can type in, which is super handy. This isn't saying that what you type in is a valid email. It's just saying here are the characters that typically are allowed in an email address. It helps a little bit. So I'm gonna change that to password here. I'm not gonna change any of the other stuff. You guys can kind of fiddle around with that. We're gonna save that, and then we're gonna create one last game object. So I'm gonna left click sign and create. I'm gonna right click, click empty, change my height to 60. And you'll see it expands already for me, which is why we selected that in the vertical group. It's super handy. I'm gonna rename this to extra buttons. Beautiful. Cool. And we're gonna give this a horizontal one. So if you remember from the start of the video, it was like a create button, a sign in button, and we're gonna do that with the horizontal group. We're gonna say 20, middle center, and the same settings we had before. Beautiful. We're gonna go ahead and head in here. We're gonna right click UI. We're gonna do a button, text mesh pro button. Again, you can use the other one if you want. Change the height of that button to 60. And you're gonna notice it fills up the whole thing, and that's okay right now. I'm gonna rename this to create button, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna put them to like our right. So we're gonna start with the leftmost button as create. And let's go ahead and rename that to create. I like the 24. Let's just leave the 24 for now. I'm gonna click on create button, hit Control D again to duplicate. You'll now see that it applies the spacing from the horizontal group, but then kind of like fills everything to the edge, which is super cool. We're gonna change create to sign in. And also change its text on the button to sign in as well. Okay, so now we have like our group here, right? If I toggle this on and off, it doesn't show it. If I toggle join panel on and sign in off, then we're kind of switching these states, which is super handy. And now we need to wire that up to our main menu manager. So this is one of the handy things that I like having main managers for, or different managers per scene, is to be able to change from these different states. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna open up menu manager here. And we're gonna kind of do a little bit of organization. So the first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna use a header attribute. Just kind of, I'll show you in the inspector in a second. It kind of just like stylizes it a bit better. And what we're going to be doing is, so right now we have references Q button, and the Q button was like, it was like a safety feature that when you weren't connected online, it wouldn't let you join. We'll kind of keep that just because it's kind of handy, but we do need reference to the game object that is like the sign-in field itself. So we're going to say private game object join container. I like calling these things containers for some reason. That's just my thing. We're gonna go down here, so we're gonna have another header, and this is gonna be, so that's the join now stuff is up at the top here, and we're gonna call this sign in. And right now we're gonna have a serialized field called game object called sign in container. Beautiful. And if I go back now, you'll see that you'll be able to see what the header actually does. So you'll see here it adds a space between headers, and it adds this nice little text, kind of groups things, makes things way easier to work with inside of an inspector, and highly recommend it. So let's go ahead and set those game objects just by dragging and dropping. You notice that I still have join panel off. I'm going to do some safety stuff at the start of the main menu manager to make sure we're in the correct state anyways. But while you're working, just kind of have like the cert ones toggled off. It's completely fine. Okay, so let's go back. Let's add a few extra things. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need some sort of way to store the password and the username. So we're going to say private string username, private string password. And these are just like your internal references. Like anything more than this menu manager, you shouldn't be really using it, right? We just need a way to go from the input field to a string for us to send it, that's all we need. Okay, so like I was saying before, we need to kind of do like an initialize for which ones are showing. So we're gonna say signing container dot set active because it's a game object to false. So that means it'll start off. We got the join now container set active, set that to false. So that means we're turning both of them off. It's just gonna be blank. And we're gonna follow in the same style here, where we're gonna actually like turn it on here. So when we load the online, we're gonna say signing container dot set active to true. And then just as safety precautions, we're gonna make sure that join containers still off, just for us. You can turn this. You can keep this button inactive, interactable, because we have loaded online. It's not going to be shown because this is off, so don't really worry about it. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to add some different functionality. So if we look at our UI here, we have input for username, password, and then 2 button clicks here. So we're going to have at least 4 functions. So the function I like to use on the inputs are one called on value changed. And what that does is anytime you type a character in, it's going to call this function with the new string. And then I'm going to be able to set that to my internal function or my internal field. Okay, so if we go back to our class here, underneath we're going to have a public void on sign in. We are going to have a public void on create account. And you'll notice that for buttons, I like to put the word on as like a prefix. We're gonna have a public void edit username. And this is going to take in a string. I'm just gonna call it text for now. And we can say our internal username is equal to text. Beautiful. You can go ahead and copy that. And we're gonna call it password. And then change the variable to password that it's also trying to do. Beautiful. Okay. One other thing we're gonna do is, in order to switch states from sign in to join, when we come back from the server, we're gonna have a call that comes back to us for sign in complete. So I'm just gonna add that function here. For now, we're gonna be adding that in a little bit, but I figured we're already writing this down. We might as well add in sign in complete. There we go. We'll put a capital C. Beautiful. Okay, so let's hook up the on sign in, on create account, and then the 2 edits. So we'll come back into here. We'll click username input, scroll down, and then on value changed. We'll click the plus. You're gonna drag in the code main into the little drop down here. Change from no function to main menu, and you'll see because we're passing in a parameter, it's gonna appear under the dynamic string of edit username. There you go. Do the same for the password. Drag, drop, select, and edit password. For the buttons, we're going to click on create. We should have under button, we should have on click. Drag, drop, select, and this is the on create account. And then we'll have to sign it as well. So nice little hookups there, super simple. On sign in. Make sure it's on sign in, not on sign in complete. And we'll go ahead and we'll save that. So everything's wired up into here, and this thing now has its state. Let's go ahead and send some commands. So the first thing we're going to do is on sign in, we're going to say socket reference. So socket reference is like we're using before here, where we want to admit that we're joining a game. We already have all that functionality here, which is awesome. We don't have to go add it. So we're going to be doing one called sign in, and we're going to be passing along a new JSON object, and then we're going to use JSON utility .json, and we're going to need a class in order to kind of like put in there. So instead of putting in network client, I'm going to go down to here at the bottom of the class. So you'll see that I'm at the end of the class here. And I'm going to bring in system.serializable. I'll remove system and bring in, using Alt Enter, I'm bringing in system at the top here. Do a public class, sign in data. Do public string username, public string password. If you guys really want, in theory, this class could be stored in here as a private instead of storing the two strings. That's up to you. This is just how I did it super quickly. So you can go either way. Similar to like our network transform and stuff. We'll say new sign-in data. And you'll notice that I have the parentheses, and then I created my new brackets after that. We're going to set username to username, password to password. So this is username and password from the class, username password from menu manager class. Beautiful. And what I'm going to do is the create account, it works the identical. So I'm going to just copy paste that, and I'm going to rename this to create account. But it takes in the same data, right? Because that's how our field works. Perhaps in the future, you might have an email. So like in Tiny Engineers, when you go to hit like create account, it'll pop in an email field here. That way I kind of have that email data. I can send people a verification code, stuff like that. We're not going to be handling that sort of thing. I'm only just showing you how to create the account, store it, make sure it's a hash password, not just like a raw string. Can't iterate that enough. And then kind of continue and have a sign-in flow that's kind of nice and be able to work, because having user accounts and stuff for online games is super handy. Okay, so we have a sign-in, we have a create account. We can probably set up this sign-in complete here, just because in order to switch the state, we just kind of have to flip these two containers, right? So sign-in complete only happens when you have the sign-in container already visible. So let's go ahead and turn that off. And then we'll want to turn on the join container now, right? So we're kind of flipping from this like fields to this join now button like you switched in the main menu. Cool. No one's calling that yet. In order for that to call, if you go to the network client, we'll create like a callback here at the end for sign in. So the idea here, what we're gonna do is I'm not gonna relay, most times you'll wanna relay back error information. That's fine. I believe in you guys that you guys should be able to kind of do that yourself. I shouldn't have to really show you that because it's just kind of using these different commands that we've already learned about. But we do need to hook up the sign in here. So we'll say sign in, and then it's not going to bring back any data because we're only going to return this if they actually could sign in. We do need an event though that they can fire. So similar to this static event, we're going to have public static action on sign in complete. We don't need to pass any extra data, so that's why we don't have socket.io event in there. Cool. We'll invoke that, and anybody subscribed can get to that. In order to subscribe, we'll go to start. Make sure this is above. You could, I guess, in theory, probably do it in here. But I like doing it at the start. We're going to say network client. because it's static and public, we can see it right from network client on sign and complete. We'll add to it on sign and complete, and there you go. So when we get back the data from the server, it's going to invoke our action, and our action is going to come to the menu manager, which is then assigned to this function. It's going to flip from the fields to create or sign in, and it's going to flip it to the join now. Okay, that's a lot. Let's go ahead and just kind of preview. Like, you won't be able to do anything, but you'll be able to see that it is showing stuff first. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to toggle all this off to kind of show you. If you go to your intro, start this up, you're going to notice that it's going to show our password field. Right? Everything's working. Nice. We'll create, sign in. It's not really doing anything because we're not hooked up yet. Okay, let's go to our server. Okay, so let's go to our server here. First thing I'm going to do is that if you haven't already removed this, under server, let's get rid of some sample testing. Beautiful. We don't need that anymore, right? We can leave the function calls inside the database here. They're kind of handy for future stuff, but we don't really need it right now. Under connection, so let's remove this for you guys so you guys can see. Okay. I guess it won't let me sum. Let's see. Will it let me scroll in? All right, it's not gonna let me scroll in. So zoom. We'll find out later. I don't know where the zoom is on here. On Visual Studio, I have the key command. Okay, so under our server here, we are going to go into and set up, under disconnect, we're going to set up socket.on create account. And we've already set up that stuff inside our UI. It's going to send us a function with some data, which can be username and password. And we can do something for it. So we're going to call our server here because we have reference to it. We're going to say we want the database. And we're going to create a function called create account, passing in data.username, data.password. And then I want the results that are going to come back as a function that's going to do some stuff here. And for now, we'll say console.log results dot. And we're gonna send back a JSON packet. So don't really worry about like what these are for now. I'll more explain to when we get there. But we're gonna have basically, it's gonna return a true or false, whether it's valid, right? True being yes, we did create an account or we did sign in, and false is gonna be something went wrong. And then we're gonna give it a reason as well. So we're gonna say results dot reason. Beautiful. And just so you guys know, we're gonna say results will return a true or false based on if the account already exists or not. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll create the sign in function here. So it's basically the same. We can rename this to sign in. It's going to bring us some data. We're going to have a function here called sign in with username, password, and result. We can keep this line because it's kind of handy, right? And the only thing we're going to do is if results are valid, socket, which we have reference to our socket. This is why we kind of make this connection object. Like, it's super handy to like connect the server, the player, and the socket all together. And once you have that, then it's super easy to write all this sort of stuff, which is good. Okay, so we're gonna do sign in, right? And if I omit sign in, you'll come into network client. It'll do this. It'll call back, and it'll do the switch, right? Okay. Let's go ahead and let's set up these functions inside of our server. So the first one we're going to do is create account. Okay, so we're going to do create account. And create account is going to take in a username and password along with our callback. All right, so let's determine a couple things we need to do to create an account. So the first thing, we're not going to be doing this right in this tutorial, but generally you'll want to perform some sort of regex expression on your username and your password to determine that they're indeed correct lengths. All right, so maybe your database doesn't handle the $sign correctly, and then in that case, you want to have the expression be able to return false if you have it in there, for example. And you can do a variety. You can do like a client-side validation check before you even send to the server, but make sure you're always doing the server-side check. It's very important. Okay, so I'm just gonna write that note. You may want to check the length and perform a reg expression on this. We're not going to be doing that here. What we are going to be doing though is we're going to need a hashed password. So we're going to be using an npm library for this. So we can go ahead and install. Let's do that so you guys can actually see the line. So we're going to do npm install password.hash. Beautiful. Let that install. Let's go up to our top here. We'll say let password hash equal to require. Password hash. There we go. Beautiful. And what we're going to be doing is this is going to, and you guys can go look this up on Google or whatever, but it's going to be performing a hash on our password to add some salt in front of it, and then kind of put our password in a way in the database that if somebody was to get your database, they couldn't get your user's passwords easily. Okay? Majority of these times, a lot of these algorithms are more based on, oh, you can never crack it. It's more based on this would take them so long to crack that they're going to stop, right? You might hear the term rainbow tables as a thing where like common passwords such as the weird password, they're like, oh, this matches in yours, so I understand that your algorithm is using this hashing method. I know how to unlock your people's passwords. Never store them as a string. I can not stress that enough. Especially if you want people to actually take your service, like strongly. If you're storing them a password and they get hacked, or they know you're storing them as a password, you will just never gain business ever again. Like, just plain simple like that. So make sure you're doing your due diligence. Check up on the different algorithms stuff you can use. You can use the one that I'm showing you now. It'll work for majority of cases. There's other ways that you can go and improve this, such as putting in your own little salt. So the salt is like something that the hashing algorithm puts at the front or inside the hash itself in order to kind of give it like a beefier length, and it's like specific to your program. So you can kind of do that as well yourself. So in certain cases, I'll go ahead and do that in Tiny Engineers, where I'll do a different combination of like a token almost, where I'm like, this gets put in with everybody's passwords. They don't really know about it, but it kind of beefs everything up, and it makes it so it's very hard for people with rainbow tables and stuff to be able to determine what generic passwords are matching in your database. So don't take this like lightly. Make sure you guys are doing this properly. Okay? All right, I've done my little rant. Let's go ahead. We'll say password hash dot generate, and then password. So like I said, this is the most simplistic form. There might be another form where your password is actually a combination of like their username and some random like characters that they can't type. So like maybe you don't allow them to type dashes, right? Because the one thing you want to avoid is the tail of a username touching the start of a password or something, like that. You know what I mean? And then the actual password. Something that when they actually go to sign, you could be able to do. That's just adding like your own salt. What I was saying. So for this method, we're going to let them do their version of the salt, their version of the algorithm. You'll be able to see in the database what I mean. And we'll hash the password. Okay, so then we're going to say, so the first thing we need to do actually before we create the account, we need to attempt to see if someone actually has this username, right? So attempt to see if someone is already in the database, right? So when we did our little samples here where we're pulling all the users, that's a good example where it's like, or this one's pulling from a specific name. If Bob already exists in the database, you can't create a new guy named Bob. Okay? Just doesn't work that way. You probably want unique usernames. All right? There's a reason why like Blizzard and stuff attach like the hashtag with 4 digits on the end. Like they do that for a reason, so everybody's unique. Right? I might not use username as a unique key, right? Okay, so if I go to my database right now under users, you'll see I have ID. So I'm more likely to use that. It's much faster to do the query on a single digit, double digits, than it is like a string query. So you'll see like, even if I had multiple users, in theory have a way to uniquely identify them, but just for now, we're gonna keep them unique. Okay, so our database right now doesn't have a password field. All right, and I particularly don't like how I spell username. I don't know why I did that. So actually, if you go back to your server really quick, let's put this as a lowercase. Like this, like really bothers me. So before we finish create account, let's put that as a lowercase. Let's come to here, and I'll show you kind of how to like add to your table, which is kind of handy. So if you go under users and structure here. We're going to go to change username, call that name, and then the next thing we're going to do is after username, we're going to add 1 column. We're going to hit go. We're going to make this varchar of 255. We're going to call this password. We're going to save and to say the table users been altered successfully. If you go to browse now, you'll see now we have username spelled correctly, password now there. And if you go to browse, Hixie doesn't have a password. Let's go ahead and you can either hit delete or you can select hit delete and we'll get rid of Hixie there. And I'll find any, so we don't have anybody in the database, so we're gonna go ahead and fix that. So let's go back to create account here. And it says attempt to see if someone's already using the database. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to say this.connect. It's going to give us a connection. Beautiful. We're going to say the query. And this is going to be very, very similar to like what's up here, right? So you'll see a lot of times like when I'm working on Timed Engineers, I'll copy a lot of these sort of sections. They're very, very much the same. And we're going to say select username from, put this all capitals, keep it consistent, from users, where username is equal to question mark, connection.query. We're going to give them the query. Our username. We're going to look for some errors or the results that come back. Hopefully there's none. That's the goal. Nobody has the account. Okay, so when you're setting up queries and you need to perform 2 queries, right? So think about this. We're first doing a query to see if the user exists. The next one is going to be injecting this new username password into the database. When you're doing multiple queries, so you'll see up here, I release the connection right after I'm done the query. If you're doing multiple queries, do not do this, okay? What you're gonna do actually instead is only release it if you got an error. So we're gonna say if the error, then we can release the connection. And the reason why we're doing this is because we need to do another query again. Right, so we're gonna put this in the brackets. We're gonna basically it's this line and this line being combined. Okay, and so if we didn't get an error, we still have the connection because we're gonna use it again. The thing we do want to check is we want to see if results at 0 is not undefined. If it's not undefined, it means that something returned to us from the database. In this case, someone's already in there. Okay, so we're gonna say callback, return, just to end it. You'd probably want to release your connection here as well, just to be safe. And we're gonna tie in that valid and that reason. So we're gonna toss in a new object here saying valid, not valid. So it's gonna be false, reason, user already exists. A lot of these errors that we're gonna be producing today, you don't want to send to your client. Keep that in mind. You might want them on your server. Don't ever send them to your client, right? Don't be like, username or password is incorrect for this username, right? That's like bot 101 right there, where they're like, oh, let's just try another one. Yeah, so don't do that. So we got valid and reason. We're gonna release the connection just to be safe and return. Cool. If it was undefined, we're gonna put the user in there. Beautiful. Let's just reuse query here. And we're gonna do an insert. So we're gonna say insert into users. We're gonna be inserting a username and password. And then the values are gonna be question mark, question mark. Beautiful. We're gonna say connection.query. We'll pass in the query. Make sure this is in the same order that it's written in. So username and hashed password, not password, hashed password. Hashed password. I'll say it one more time. Hashed password. Yep. Make sure you put it in there. All right. So we're gonna have error, results. Beautiful. Okay. So because this is the end of our query line here, I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this because I'm lazy. You can actually just release connection right now at the start because we're done. We don't need to do any more queries. We've now inserted. We're gonna release the connection. It's gonna error out, whatever. So typically this is how I write it. I don't typically write it like this, just because I'm copy and pasting so much and I have to like flip back and forth. Okay, but if we didn't get an error, then the callback is true. Valid, true, reason, success. Alrighty, let's go ahead. Let's launch this bad boy. Let's try her out. Okay, so right now we have the create account. We don't have a sign in, so don't click the sign in button. You'll get an error. Alright, so let's go ahead. We'll start up intro. I'm gonna say Hixie. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna sign in. Like I said, don't hit that button. See how it's not a function? Don't hit that. That was my dumb mistake. I'm dumb. Okay, let's restart that. Alright. Let's hit create. You don't see any feedback here, that's fine. Create account is not a function. It would help if you spelt the word create. You know, spelling things very, very important. Round 3, third time's the charm here. We're gonna go in and it's gonna say success. So what did it do? It searched the database. Nobody was found under Hixie, and we inserted him in there. If you go back to the database, you're like, oh, it's blank. just click refresh. You're gonna say Hixie, and you're gonna see our new hashed password, right? So I told you my password was 1234556. All right, this is what I'm talking about. 56 characters. Okay, like this has some salt in there, got some other stuff in there. You know what I mean? This is nice. You want to see this, okay? If you just saw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like I swear, you need to rewind the video and go watch my little rant. This is a lot better, okay? And I mean, you're gonna come on and think and be like, but there's so much better ways. Okay, this is good. There are so many ways to improve this, okay? But at least start with this. Okay, this is a lot better. But you'll see we have at least one entry. And you'll notice that even though we've created and deleted and stuff, the ID is 5. And that's because it just kind of keeps incrementing where those people are gone. Super handy. It wants to make sure that it's always unique. It's like, I'll just go to the next number. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? So we have Hixie and password. So if we come back in here, because we haven't signed in, right? And I go ahead and I try to create again. You'll notice that it's going to say false and it says undefined. And it would be nice if I spelled the word reason there. So go ahead and rename it to reason. I don't know why I put release. But if we go ahead and try and create, you'll see that user already exists. And the connection gets released. So I create account, working. All right, let's try this now for signing in. So for sign in here, I'm gonna take username, password, callback. And this one hopefully should be short because we're only doing one query. So I'm gonna say this connection. Let query is equal to select password from users where username is equal to what we're going to pass into it. In this case, when you sign in, your server actually might want other information, right? It might want stats and stuff. For this tutorial, I only need the password. But yeah, you might want to pull other stuff. Just keep that in mind. Your idea here is to not hit the database too much, but you do have to do it in some critical times. So we're going to say connection query. Pass in our query there. We're going to pass in the username. And then it's going to give us an error or some results. Beautiful. We are going to copy and paste this little thing here because it's a single query. And I'm lazy. Beautiful. Okay, so if results at 0 is not undefined, okay, we at least got a result back, right? Like we just did that. If it comes back, it means the user does not exist, all right? So we're gonna say, we're gonna just copy this little callback here. Say callback is false. User does not exist. Okay. If they exist, we're not out of the park yet. We gotta check that password. How do we check that password? We use our password hash, not verify. It requires a password, right? We pass that into the function. Not that we did it in the query, but we pass it into the function, so we can still use it. We're also going to take the results from 0, and we're going to look for the field passwords, right? So I brought back passwords in my query. Even if you brought back other stuff, you can still dot into it, dot password, right? It matches. And then we're going to say if those two are verified using the hashing algorithm, what it's going to do, it's going to take this password, it's going to hash it, and then compare the hashes, and then return whether it's true or false. If it is, we will return true with success. else. We want to say false. And this is what I was talking about before, where this password does not match, right? Like, user exists, password doesn't match. Don't ever send this to the client. Send a generic, honestly, for these two, send a generic one that says user cannot be validated or something. Like, you'll see that on websites all the time. Don't ever send them the actual, like, exact one. You can on your server. You can be like, passwords don't match, send them this response or something, right? So, in reality, you should never return this or you'll get botted. Ha ha ha. So that's your fault because I wrote ha ha ha, okay? Alright, beautiful. Let's try this out. So everything's all connected, and then if it works, we can sign in, right? Alright, I believe. So the first thing we're gonna do actually is we're gonna test a wrong password. So I'm gonna add another character here. I'm gonna hit sign in. You'll see a password does not match. Okay, so I found the user, password doesn't match, that's good. Next thing we're gonna do, I'm gonna get rid of the 7 here. I'm gonna hit a 2, I'm gonna hit sign in. User does not exist. So you'll see that our 2 error cases, make sure you are checking this stuff. This is like a big part of development. User does not exist. All right, let's actually sign in for real. We're gonna hit Hixie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sign in. Bingo, we get the nice response. I don't even need to check the server, but just for fun, you'll see success. And you're gonna then click join now, and you'll now see our beautiful game. We've now signed in. Our connection now is of Hixie, right? If you want to take this a step further, when you do actually sign in here, maybe store the username in the player object. Okay, you know what I mean? You got it up there. You might as well store it. Okay. Otherwise, you're kind of like signing in. You kind of just tossed it. You kind of took the name and you just like tossed her out. You'll like, see you later. Because you might use it for other stuff. A lot of times, I will, like I said, I like to reference things by ID. So maybe when instead of returning password, I might return ID as well and push the ID into the player object. Because then what I like to do is for stats, I like to have stats in a different table. You can reference that by ID. Rather than searching by a string, which is super handy. Anyways, that concludes our login. Like I said, there's tons of ways to expand it, and hopefully you guys do. As always, make sure you guys give it a like, subscribe, join the Discord, check out the Patreon, everything and above. And as always, we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Hey guys, I just wanted to make sure that I give a nice shout out to all my Patreons over on Patreon. And they're going to be in the following list for you. Arthur Zhang, ARVR 2020. Timothy McCoon. Chris Jarosco. Hey everyone, if you guys liked the video, make sure you guys click that subscribe button, give it a like, and make sure to comment. It really helps out. And if you guys are looking to support the project further, I also have my Patreon, which will be linked in the description down below. Thank you, and have a good day.